All right, this is another interesting question from Beth. Perhaps the eunuch, and she's talking about Acts 8, the last part of Acts 8, the story where I'm not going to tell you the story, you can read it, but Philip was called by an angel of the Lord to go and catch up with this guy who was coming from Jerusalem, and he was on his way back to Ethiopia. I'll kind of draw that in a second and see if I can get what it looks like. But here's a question. Perhaps the eunuch was a Jew. That's a question here. Since he came to Jerusalem to worship, possibly, but Gentiles did too, by the way. There was a court of the Gentiles in the temple, and they're called God-fearers and the righteous of the nations and things like that. And also he could have been a Jewish proselyte, like he joined Judaism, he merged with it, he became a Jew, but not ethnically. I don't know. It's an interesting question. The Bible doesn't say, so I don't like going beyond the Bible unless we have more information that's pretty legitimate. So let's see if I can draw this sort of. Should I do it this way? I don't know if you can see this, but anyway, so I'm not that great of an artist and all, but it's like this is Africa, let's say, and it comes over here, and I'm not going to do this really great. And then you have Israel right here. So uh, Jerusalem is this is terrible. Right about here. Okay, there's Jerusalem. And then, the eunuch was on his way back. He went to probably the Passover feast, definitely a festival. And he came through this area. By the way, eunuch emasculated, and or there are some situations in the Septuagint, which is a Greek form of the Bible, and also other Greek literature that eunuchs necessarily weren't that emasculated. Like they weren't emasculated, and that they actually were just a title of a high official. This guy was major official to a queen who they called Candace, but that wasn't her name. It's a dynasty of queens. Just like in Egypt, you have pharaohs, a bunch of pharaohs. Well, the Candace was she was a Candace queen. She was a queen, like a pharaoh in Kush area, or Ethiopia. So you've got right here. He was coming this way. And by the way, Philip seems to be up there. Remember, if you know that passage there, he was in Samaria and God did great things from him, and God called him to get away from there and go to this guy. It's a remarkable story out of nowhere. Just this, that's pretty massive. I mean, or a third of a chapter, pretty lengthy thing. God inspired him to put this in here for some reason. That Luke found out about this story. Philip may have told him or whatever. And so here's what happened. So Gaza is right here. So he was on his way through Gaza. Was one of the 5 cities of the Philistines, and it was the lowest one, southwest area here. And he came through here, and this is Dead Sea here, and so probably Gaza is a little bit lower, not too far. Anyway, right here, probably this is a little bit lower too. See, I'm messing this up a little bit. So Gaza was right about there. My pen all of a sudden is going out. So he came over here and he met up with him. And by the way, from there, the eunuch, once he received Christ, which is so cool, he got the gospel because he was reading Isaiah 53. He was reading through the passage. By the way, in Isaiah 56, it talks about that God will take eunuchs and foreigners and he loves them. He didn't say he loves them, but it's like he wants them as foreigners to be a part of his people. So he may have read through there too. And he must have gotten, if he was a non-Jew, maybe he got the scroll from there, but it's hard for a non-Jew to get it. He probably was a Jew or a proselyte, like I said. But anyway, so if I can draw this this is Sinai, the peninsula, and then you come up here, and then you have the Red Sea and all that. That's sort of a feeble description. And then this is Egypt here, and then down here is Ethiopia. So he was headed for here. And by the way, the first century Jewish people and most people really admired the Ethiopians. They were the one guy who was it? One of the writers, Pliny, a Roman writer, said they were the tallest and the most handsome of all races. So that's pretty cool. But they were very admired and such. As a matter of fact, there was a military campaign against it. By the way, maybe they were trying to get some of their riches or power or whatever in the first century BC. And then I read that uh, they were trying to do a scientific, they actually came in for a scientific expedition to find out. Another military under Nero tried to get there, but they canceled it, tried to do a military thing against them. I don't know. But basically, they were liked by most people. Anyway, he would have come down here and he would have, shared the gospel. So Philip called him to catch him. He caught him probably in here somewhere. Oh, that was a terrible. He called him here on the way to Gaza. So very cool. I hope you can see all that. And it's a great story. But if he was a Gentile, then he could have been, but in Acts 10, like 2 chapters later, that's when Peter became like sort of the main one who started the first process. Gentiles to become Christians, and not just the Jewish people. So, but he could have been an exception. Just like Jesus, he said, I am called for the lost sheep of Israel. And that's, he really was focused on Jewish people in his ministry, except he did take 2 days and the whole town practically converted because of the one with Samaria. So those were half Jews and all, but he also did talk to, he healed and delivered the little girl from Syrophoenicia, which was evidently a Gentile. So he did some ministry to the Gentiles, but his primary first thing until Acts later, he came first to the Jewish people. Paul said to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Did that answer the question? What was the question again? Let's see. It says, perhaps the eunuch was a Jew. Yeah, possibly. Or he was a proselyte to the Jewish religion. And that was very popular. People came to the festivals and came. If he was actually a eunuch, by the way, he was in Deuteronomy 23, verse 1, it actually... they can't go into the temple, at least into the closer temple. Maybe he went into the court of Gentiles or something. So interesting stuff. Hope that answered your question. What was it again? Perhaps maybe he was a Jew. Since he came to Jerusalem and worship, definitely came to Jerusalem and worship. But a lot of Gentiles also worship, to primarily Jewish people, though. All right, very good question, Beth. Thanks.